Welcome to The Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. Each week we investigate themes of leadership, entrepreneurship, and mindset with some of the greatest minds in real estate. And now, the data scientist of real estate, George Roberts.
All right, welcome back, investors. Today we have Dan Lewkowicz back again, and we're going to talk about a lot of exciting things. We're going to continue our talk about current topics in triple net and commercial real estate. We're going to talk about how to build a social media presence. Dan currently has over 20,000 followers on LinkedIn. I think he's going for 60,000 or maybe 100,000. His love of automobiles. And we're also going to get an opportunity to learn more about Dan's business principles and a few fun questions as well. So welcome back, Dan.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate it.
I'd love to talk about increases in commercial real estate transaction volume. We're recording this in the middle of 2024. We've seen volumes pretty much crash, particularly for multifamily, but I know you're hiring. That's one bit of evidence that things are picking up. Where do you see the volumes continuing to go in the future?
Yes, I will say I'm very fortunate. 2.5 years ago, I really saw with all this, currency going into the market that we were going to have an issue with inflation, and the Fed would react by raising rates. So I knew that things would kind of change, and those 4.5 cap, 5 cap deals that we were doing before wouldn't be as prevalent. So I had already had a strong footing in shopping center sales, vacant property sales, short-term lease sales, but I really pivoted and focused a huge amount on those three categories. Vacant property sales, because they're going to be relatively immune to interest rates. You're going to be bought by developers for cash and repositioned. Short-term leases, they eventually go into the same category. And then, like I mentioned, shopping centers, really because all along, let me back up. When you look at any asset class, there's really one metric that you need to look at if you want to know the market volume. How much can I predict? How much transaction is going to occur in a specific type of property in a given market? So you look at one factor and one factor only, and that's the delta, the spread between interest rates and cap rates, right? So if I can borrow at 2.75% and I can buy at 6%, I'm buying all day long. And I'm meaning the market, people out there in the market, because I've got, 325 basis points of spread, okay? When interest rates are 7% and cap rates are 5%, market comes to a screeching halt. Well, guess what? There's a tremendous amount of product in the shopping center space that trades even to this day significantly above above current interest rates. I'll give you an example. I just sold a small shopping center last month in Grand Rapids at a 9 cap, and the debt was sourced at a 6.75 cap. That's a healthy delta. So in terms of that's my business. That's why I've been I'm very thankful, and things have been going well and looking to grow my team. In terms of the market as a whole, yes, George, you're right. Just like multifamily, we experienced a bottom. Now, there is one interesting thing. As a brokerage that transacts, close to $1 billion of net lease product every year, we have insight and access to specific information, right? That can tell us really kind of like a sampling of a more macro picture of what's going on. I will tell you the last 2.5 months or so, we've seen an uptick in listings, in offers, and in closings. Now, I wish I could put my finger on some variables to tell you why that's happening. I don't know, because rates have been flat. Maybe that's what's happening. Rates have been flat and people are saying, even no increase is a relief. I don't know if that's the case, right? I will tell you that once we see probably 2 consecutive or relatively close in line interest rate decreases, I think the market will come alive in a major way. Yeah. Now I believe that will be this summer. I believe going into the November election, that the administration wants to declare a war on inflation. Jerome Powell wants to declare a win in the war on inflation. And everyone wants to say, hey, we beat it. We're off to better times. Look at what we did, right? That's just the place that we're at in history right now. I hope that happens, because I want interest rates to be lower. I believe that lower rates, lower taxes are better for the economy and for the populace. So, my prediction is that once we see those 2 or more relatively close interest rate decreases, which may come prior to November, I think this market is going to come alive.
Yeah, I love the prediction. I know a lot of people are with you, myself included. More than likely, we've seen prices more or less sustained. We've seen some pullback, but no crash by any stretch of the
No.
imagination. Just imagine what's going to happen when those rates do come down, and they will at some point come down. Let's just pivot to social media before we have a little fun. You have over 20,000 followers on LinkedIn. Tell us some of your secrets.
Number one is consistency. I mean, I don't know exactly when I started this consistent routine, but it was 6 or 7 years ago at least. And that routine involves daily posting. I did take a break for almost a year, which in hindsight I do kind of regret. But aside from that, it's daily posting. It's like a do or die thing. I mean, I love LinkedIn's scheduling feature because I can schedule the day before or multiple days before, and I don't have to worry about it. I can wake up in the morning and say, that's done. Now I just have to respond. I will say that I think that social media, and specifically LinkedIn, I'm not an expert on I'm not well versed, I should say, on any other social media platform. But to me, from the research I've done in my experience, LinkedIn is by far the best place for professionals like us to do what we can do and leverage that power. So if you're not using it, just get on it, make a nice profile, put up a nice picture, pay for the picture if you have to, put a nice banner and start posting. If you can't do every day, do 3 times a week. It's very important to comment on other people's, posts. I'll tell you, LinkedIn is not only social media in terms of me being able to market myself, but it's where I get my information. It's where I get my knowledge. It's super valuable. I will also tell you that, I've had a lot of things happen to me off of social media because of social media. Here's a great example. I was, George will know where this is. I was up at the Grand Hotel at the 𝐿𝐵𝐵 bar, which is this beautiful bar on top of the Grand Hotel, overlooking, the water essentially. And there's a guy sitting over in the corner with his wife. And eventually he just comes up to me and he says, "Are you Dan Lewkowicz from LinkedIn?" And I just kind of laughed. I said, I didn't know what to say, So we started talking. He's like, "I follow all your content. I want to just sit down with you. Can we get together, back in Metro Detroit?" I said, "Sure, no problem." We got together. He wanted some advice on starting his own brokerage. We had a great chat. We went out to dinner. A couple weeks later, I get an email. This guy referred me a $24 million listing from one of his clients that was in my space and not in his space, right? Yeah. All from social media. This guy 100% would never have walked up to me had he not known who I am. People get a feeling of warmth and familiarity through their interactions with you on LinkedIn that makes them comfortable to interact with you in the real world. Okay. That's just one story. I have, I think, 3 listings right now, one of which is under contract. They didn't come directly from LinkedIn, but they came from commercial real estate groups where people said, "Hey, I need a net lease broker." And 7 or 10 people said, "Dan Lewkowicz is your guy." And they don't know me. The only reason they're saying that is that on LinkedIn, guess what? I am the triple net guy, which is exactly who I wanted to be. And that's exactly who these people need. So, my perspective is that my business is that the commercial real estate brokerage business, it's predicated on cold calling. That is the #1 outreach tool. I don't diss or put down cold calling, but cold calling is 1-to-1. I pick up the phone, George answers. I'm never talking to more than one person at once. And many times I'm leaving voicemails or no one's answering. I'm talking to no one. On LinkedIn, I can put a post up and get 100,000 people looking at it at one time, right? So I believe for me, 20,000, great milestone, but I'm looking to hit 60,000, 100,000, because I believe that I can amplify my brand and amplify my voice. And my outreach for leads and for business generation can be, hey, here's an informative post about net lease, and then people reach out to me. It's very powerful. If you're not doing it, or if you're not doing it to the best of your ability, you're missing out. I highly recommend it. I could talk to anybody who wants about this and help and give tips and give feedback. It's such a valuable resource. It's not to be dismissed.
Yeah, huge. And if you want to know what Dan is thinking about any topic, I would highly, highly, highly recommend LinkedIn. I think you're one of the few people who creates genuine value. It's not just,
thank you.
Hey, I just closed this, and those posts are good too. But you have a lot of valuable, truly valuable information. A lot of what I know about triple net is me just following Dan. All right, well, I promised we would have some fun here. So let's get to it. You have a well-known love of automobiles. So let's just hit that for a moment.
Where do you want me to go?
All right, well, there's one particular make and model that you just love more than anything. Like I see a post about it all the time.
Yeah, so I have an obsession with Dodge Vipers. I always have. I'm that guy who's blinded. All other cars can be amazing, but they're never as cool as the Dodge Viper. And the reason is, it's kind of cool. So the reason is, first of all, when I was young, I could get up a picture on my phone, but when I was young, I had a friend whose dad worked at the Viper Prowler plant on Connor Avenue. And he used to take us, this was, I remember in 1997, we went. So I was about 14 years old, and he would take us to the plant, and they would let us sit in the cars, and then they would take us in rides in these cars. And I remember just absolutely falling in love from that moment. My dad also bought me, one of those little Dodge Viper 18, scale models that I had on my desk. Actually, I'm sure I have one here in my office somewhere. And growing up, my dad, he always said to me, he knew how much I loved that car. And he always said, Dan, they called me Danny when I was a kid, but he said, Danny, if you keep working hard, one day you'll be zipping along in your Viper. So for me, all that hard work that I've done and all the trials and tribulations and ups and downs, because believe me, this has not been all, roses and all success. All of those, I would say to myself, Danny, keep working hard and one day you'll zip along in your Viper. And I'm very thankful to be able to do that. I have a red 1998 Dodge Viper GTS, which they only made 477 of them that year. And I have a picture I could pull up of me as a 14-year-old sitting in a red 1998 Dodge Viper GTS. It could be the same car. Fate might have it, but I love it. I love the community. I mean, part of me says that, I'm in a Viper club or I'm in these car clubs. I go to car meets, and these are people that have, tremendous financial means, most of them. Many of them have cars that are way nicer than mine. And, a lot of those people are invested in commercial real estate. Maybe it's a great way to network and to meet people. So, I mean, I love it. I love commercial real estate. I love cars. And that's another thing about LinkedIn. I know, George, you mentioned, following me and getting value add content, that it's huge. You have to be providing value and giving people a reason to come back. What I found, though, is that I like to break it up. And maybe every 7th or 10th day, I post about my kids, or I post about cars, or I post about a car meetup, and just make it light. People like to see that you're a human. And I could keep this to myself. I probably would, and maybe I should, but it's such a big part of me. I want people to see it. And I can't tell you how many people have reached out and been like, oh, Dan, I'm a commercial real estate broker, or I'm an investor, and I have a Viper, or I have this, this Mustang or this Ferrari, and I live 2 miles from here. And then it's like, boom, new relationship. So I love it.
I love it. We got to relate, and you got to be human to relate. I think that's
Yes.
a very good thing. It's actually is very, very important. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, let's have just a little more fun. I've got a little bit more whimsical questions. And this is you're just the second interviewee that I've beta tested these on, but I know that you're definitely unflappable. So let's just go through it. So these are my getting to know you or fun questions. So what was your dream job as a kid, and only wrong answers accepted here?
I wanted to be a garbage truck driver because I thought it was so cool that they were hanging off the trucks. But when I got older and saw what they actually did, I decided this was a better path.
I like it. Good choice. What's the most exciting place on the planet that you've always wanted to visit but never have?
Ooh, I've always wanted to go to San Diego for some reason. I've never been there, and I've heard it's it's beautiful. In terms of like something more exotic than that, I lived in Israel on the Mediterranean for 4 years. So I love that part of the world, but I never got a chance to go to Italy or Greece. I'd love to do that.
Okay, when was the last time you did something for the first time?
The last time I did something for the first time, that is such a tough question to answer. It wasn't that recently, but I did this twice. So the first time was I rented a Lamborghini Huracan, and I took it on M1 concourse on the
Yes.
track at 140 miles an hour. And it was absolutely nuts, so much so that I had to rent a Ferrari 488 GTB and take it on the Michigan International Speedway track in Ann Arbor and go a little bit faster.
All right, that's amazing. I've been out to Speed Vegas, so I know the thrill. But for
Oh,
me, it kind of did the opposite because, when I realized there's not even a clutch, they get these pedal shifters. I mean, I'll probably lose some listeners on this, but Dan, it's so emasculating. Like after that.
They wouldn't even let us use the. So first of all, I'm a stick shift guy all day long. I'd prefer to drive stick shifts. I own stick shifts. I love them, but they wouldn't even let us use the paddle shifters. So it was still incredible, right, to drive those cars. But I can't imagine what it would have been like at least to have that sequential, paddle shifting, or even better. I don't even think they come in a completely manual transmission, but yeah. I missed that third pedal, that's for sure.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Yeah, great experience. But yeah, that cured me though. So I don't think I need an exotic car after that. Okay. All right. Quick here. Crunchy peanut butter or smooth?
Crunchy only.
That's
Smooth
good.
Is like not even
good choice. I love it. I'm beginning to like you more through this interview, Dan.
We have two types in our house. There's the crunchy, and then there's the other garbage.
All right. Just one last, and then we'll get serious. We got to learn about your philosophy to business. But what is your favorite song to sing in the shower?
I kind of lost my touch for singing in the shower. Maybe I should try to bring it back. But it's funny. I'm very similar in my music taste to my vehicle taste. There's one band that I fell in love with in high school, and I love them to death. They're called OAR, or Of a Revolution. And I could listen to them and them only all day long. I do like John Mayer, Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, Hotel California, that type of stuff. I'm sorry, man. I got one quick aside, but I don't know how it happened, but on LinkedIn, I saw someone, and I've been like obsessed with the lead singer of OAR, like not in an unhealthy way, but just like I love him, and like that's like what I would want to be when I grow up, so to speak. But I noticed this guy on LinkedIn that was like interacting with my posts, and he had the same last name as the lead singer, and he looked like him. So I was like, what the heck? I sent him a message, and I was like, hey, how are you? I was like, this is a long shot, but like, are you related to Mark Roberge? And he responded to me, and he's like, Mark is my little brother. I assume that you're a fan of the band. I was the like producer for like decades for all of their music, and we just like hit it off like crazy. I made a post with an OAR, video that I took at a concert, tagged him, and he's like, hey, listen, I know it's a long ways away, and it was when we did this, but he's like, in August, OAR is coming to Detroit, near where you live. I already got you backstage passes, like meet and greet, tickets, everything. And I was like, oh my, it was just such a cool story. I loved it.
Love it. That is so cool. Okay, great. We got to get serious again, just for a minute. Okay. All right. So here's our famous series, The Seven. 7 questions about life in real estate. So if you could be known for only one thing, Dan, what would it be?
I would probably say knowledge.
All right, you definitely share a lot of knowledge with other people. So what's the greatest lesson in leadership you've learned as an entrepreneur?
I think it's like a servant leadership, attitude. Just like I have leadership moments, because I have junior broker, and I look at every situation. I try to look at every situation through his eyes, as if I'm on the same level as him. I'm not his superior. We're doing this together. And I just think in general, like, people don't like condescension, and people do like when you're relatable and approachable. So for me, like in leadership, I try to look at it through the lens of the person that I'm leading and me being them in that moment, so that we can do it together. I just find that to be much more successful.
Love it. What personal characteristic has been most pivotal to your success?
I'd say focus. When I was younger, I was all over the place. I mean, I have, the downside is I've lost a little bit of my energy as I've gotten older, which is very hard for me, to be honest with you. But I've been able to hone my focus. Whereas when I was younger, I always had 5 or 10 side hustles, and I was just all over the place. I remember having a boss years ago who told me, when I was working in title, he said, you can do other things. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but don't do them until you're an expert in this thing. So I've become much better at focusing and at limiting distractions. And right now, 99.9% of my energy and time goes into net lease brokerage, because that's what I believe is my highest and best usage of my time right now. So it's really focused. It's really dialing it in, and the Gary Keller one thing type of outlook.
Beautiful. Can you give us a tip or trick that investors can implement in their business today, or brokers?
Yeah, I mean, this tip and trick would be applicable for both, but it's underwrite and analyze as many deals as you can. I always give the example of like when I went house hunting and like, I looked at a house and I'm like, man, I love this house. Let's sign, let's put in an offer. And I'm the broker, so I've got that, I want to do it. And then I was like, you know what? Let's go look at another house. Look at another house. It's like, oh, this house has an attached garage. I want that. And then it's like, oh, well, look at this house. This has a third floor. Oh, this house has, a pool. I'm, making things up. But the point is that you can't be an informed consumer unless you look at your product over and over again. And in order to be an informed consumer as an investor or as a broker, you should look at hundreds of deals and continuously look at deals. You will then know what is and what is not a deal, and you will know what red flags to look out for. So I would say that that's, my piece of advice is just analyze and underwrite as many deals as you can. It's a muscle. You'll get stronger, I promise.
Awesome. And can you name a book that's helped to forge you as a leader, as an entrepreneur?
Definitely Think and Grow Rich. I mean, on my drive over here, I was going through some things and that I feel need tweaking in my life. So I just was like tweaking them mentally. And I know that reality will follow. Think and Grow Rich is such a huge book. You have to read it over and over, but just the idea of being able to manifest and visualize your destiny is what will create it is huge. Another book, this is like more business psychology, but still very helpful. It's called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. Incredible book about all different types of psychology behind sales tactics. And it's just, I think it's a must, both of those books, actually.
All right, great. If you could just send us out with a quote to help forge our listeners as leaders and entrepreneurs, what would that be?
I mean, look, I've got it on the back of my mug here. It might be backwards, but I'll read it. It's provide value and everything else follows. I came up with that. I kind of stole it. Dan Gilbert, who's an incredible individual and done so much for our city, he had a saying that said, dollars follow, meaning like have your value proposition dollars or follow. And I was like, I thought that was a little too limiting, right? I thought it's not just dollars. It's provide value. That's what you need to provide. And everything else follows. It might not be dollars. It might be opportunity. It might be relationships. But, that's what I strive to do, especially on social media, is provide value for the sake of providing value. Don't have an offering. Don't sell anything. People will come to you. If you're a wellspring of value, everything will follow.
All right. And then just one final question. Email, carrier pigeon, smoke signals. What is the best way to reach out to the one and only Dan Lewkowicz?
I appreciate that. I mean, first of all, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can always follow me there. Please follow me there. Send me a DM, introduce yourself. Tell me that, you heard me on the Foundry on George's podcast. Obviously if you're listening to this, but you can't see my first name is Dan, last name is Lewkowicz, Lewkowicz, again, Lewkowicz. Like I said, reach out there. Also, if you own a commercial property, you want to know what it's worth, you might want to sell it. If you're a broker, you're an investor, if you want to talk real estate, if you have a deal and you need an extra set of eyes on it, even if it's not mine, or if there's anything I can do to add value, I'm going to give out my direct cell phone. It's 248-943-2838. Again, 248-943-2838. Please reach out. I get 2 or 3 calls a week, and it's honestly the highlight of my week to hear people, and then especially when they call back 6 months later and tell me about their successes. So please reach out. Consider me a resource. I want to help. I want to give back.
All right, beautiful. Thank you so much, Dan, for taking the time to share your knowledge and experience with our audience.
Absolutely. This was awesome. I love doing it with you, and I sincerely appreciate everything you do.
Thank you so much.